The season is officially over, and the Louisville Kings are your 2026 UFL champions. Where do we go from here? And let's talk about the game, too, while we're at it. It's the Bottom Line Podcast, and it starts now.
And that's the bottom line. You want a war? You're going to get one.
The cream rise to the top, oh yeah.
Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
Hard work pays off. Dreams come true. Bad times don't last, but bad guys do.
We are back again to cover the final championship game of the UFL for the 2026 season. Seems like a long time ago we started season 3, and we've buzzed through college, we've buzzed through the NFL, the whole season of the UFL. So after tonight, I'd say the bottom line's work is done. When you say, KJ?
It was a good run. Good run.
It was a good run. Let's talk a little bit about the game. In fact, let's talk a little bit about what led up to the game. When you think about it, they had the championship game in St. Louis the last 2 years before this year. And with all due respect to, I think St. Louis kind of took a bad rap on the hosting the championship game because they didn't have a Mike Rapoli the 2 years they had in St. Louis. And Mike Rapoli was able to show the league what fanfare and what a little bit of promotion, what a little bit of, media, bringing media in for a nice lengthy press conference. I mean, they did it upright this time. And I guess when I look back at the last couple of years in St. Louis, especially last year's game with DC and Michigan, and you were at that game, KJ, leading up to that game, other than our tailgate, was there any kind of fanfare that you knew of going on for those games?
I mean, they may have had something the day of that occurred, similar to kind of the Rock-esque, Tiramana marketing truck. I forgot what it was they had. I want to say outside one of the entrances, I recall someone mentioning it that day of the game. But to your point, I mean, the buildup of what Rapoli put in place with a full week slate almost of, events or social functions prior to the championship game was much more well organized. and a great preface, if you will, to reaching game day in finality. So I think, yeah, it's a 9-day difference comparatively from a marketing standpoint and build up to the actual day of the game.
It was kind of funny too. It's if you remember St. Louis last year, KJ, and then the year before that, I don't know if you were there the year before, but the championship game in the 2 years I was in St. Louis was hotter than a bejesus. And DC was almost 90 degrees at game time. So for all the fans that are beating the start the season earlier drum, having 3 consecutive championship games in hotter than hell weather kind of lays credence to the fact of maybe it does make good sense to back the season up a little bit so that we're getting done in late May versus rolling it into the beginning of summer.
Yeah, if they don't get a team up in the Windy City, it definitely you're going to find the heat pretty much everywhere if you hit that peak summer point in the year. So
let's get into the game. I watched this game live, of course, but I watched it a couple times again afterwards because that's kind of how I am. I just keep watching games and watching games, looking for turning points and what could have possibly been different had the cards been played a little different. And this game, when I look at it, all the congrats go to Louisville. A championship in your inaugural season is pretty impressive. But I think as we get into this game a little deeper, KJ, I think we're going to see that quarterback play in this game, not real good, which obviously led to not much for wide receiver stats. But this game was all about running the football and big plays. And so when you look at it, DC, it was really the tale of two halves. DC had the opportunity in the first half to take a commanding lead in this game into the halftime. I mean, you look at, let's see, first quarter, Valladay runs for that 54 yards and gets hit and forced a fumble into the end zone. So that kept the game at that time. It kept it at 3-0. So you arguably could have went up by double digits after that play. The next drive, they hold Louisville. They get the ball back. They drive the ball to midfield, and they got 2nd and 1 at midfield. 3 consecutive plays, they get nothing, and they turn it over on downs. So there again, there was an opportunity to stretch the lead even more. Then Louisville gets the ball back. Rogers throws a pick. DC gets the ball at their own 7-yard line. And what happens? DC throws a little pass out into the right flat to the wide receiver, Ty Scott, who fumbles the ball. Louisville runs it in. So now you go from being potentially double-digit lead to being behind 7-3, heading in midway mark of the second quarter. I mean, that is a huge, huge turnaround. It didn't stay a lead for Louisville very long because then DC come right back and Valladay ran for 51 yards for a touchdown. He held on to it this time, so DC went right back in the league. But you're potentially seeing DC in the 20s at halftime. And instead, they go in, and right there before half, DC had 3 field goals. Well, they had 2 field goals. They went up 10-7 after that long run. But then they added 2 more field goals before the half. But there's an argument to be made that they went conservative
Right.
on those possessions right before half. So
Yeah.
they go into halftime leading 16-7. But this game could have been, I don't want to say out of reach, but Louisville without that cheap turnover touchdown, and DC without giving the ball. I mean, it could have been 27-0, 24-0 at halftime.
Yeah.
And for all intents and purposes, the game's over. But DC let them hang. And we all know, KJ, that Louisville's kind of drew the picture of being a second half team, and they didn't disappoint, did they?
They did not. They did not. Through all the muck and mire, as you already kind of illustrated, one of the biggest things I noticed looking back was, Louisville ran fairly well their first half, I'd say, but they definitely struggled compared to the stats they were able to put up in the second half. And I think that's what made the difference for them, besides the obvious kind of choke points that DC self-inflicted upon themselves, you could say. Which is not being able to deliver when they were in the red zone in every opportunity and get the max amount of scoring points possible with each opportunity they had. But, you mentioned the quarterback play. I think you take away kind of the few burst runs that I want to say both Ian Wheeler and James Robinson both had breakaway run plays that contributed to their final stat line. But you take those away, in my eyes, I mean, there's no guarantee that, even despite the low scoring margin, that the Louisville would come back in this game, because Chandler Rogers just did not have the greatest day from a stat perspective. He was barely, 50% completion rating, had 2 picks thrown. And then on the opposite side, DC struggled just as much, if not more. I would say I'm surprised by it, solely from the standpoint, I don't think I expected, I knew Bean would probably get found out eventually, because I trusted that Louisville's defense would be able to scope it out. And as you mentioned, them being a second half team, their durability there allowed them to kind of, I think, scope him out and get a better sense of things. But at the same token, DC ends up, pulling Bean after the third quarter and putting in Perry. But they were able to kind of keep the rap on him as well, because he struggled to really be productive. So, it's definitely, you think you expected overall maybe a little bit better quarterback play from both teams. But props to the Kings, man. They stayed steady with it. The irony in all this, I think, to the point we preach so much about Tanner Brown being a dependable quarterback. And I definitely would say, I mean, the 2 field goals they made definitely helped them. They capitalized, obviously, on turnovers, which aided in their point recap, if you will, or getting points back. But Matt McCrane actually had more field goals on the stat line than Tanner did, which is interesting to me, I guess, when I look at the kind of the overall stats of the game. But all that to say, I guess, we preached all season about DC and the penalties being one of like the biggest concern points. And in this game, I mean, they were neck and neck with Louisville. They both had 5, I think, total consecutive penalties. Louisville only had like 3 more total penalty yards at, I think it was 83 or 53 total yards. I mean, it wasn't the penalties per se that, caused them to lose this game. To your point, I think it was just flat out discipline in certain areas where they could have had a lot higher scoring margin, been up a lot, more at half and going into the end of the game. And they just, they let the Kings dance around and play around a little too long, and it ended up biting them in the butt. So,
yeah, well, Louisville come out that second half, and on their first drive, they stalled. But Tanner Brown was able to connect on a 57-yard field goal to make it 16-10. I mean, at the time,
field goal.
That's invaluable. That's invaluable to be able to salvage something, to get the game to 6, and now it's a 1-score game. DC gets the ball back, 4 plays, and they're punting the ball. Louisville's able to go down, get another 10 or field goal. Now it's 16-13. DC gets the ball back, 4 plays again, punt the ball. Louisville gets it. Wheeler reels off the 44-yard run. Louisville takes a lead by the 4-minute mark of the third quarter, and it's like, what the hell just happened? And then the floodgates open. So next possession, they get a 9-yard touchdown from Rogers to Winstead. So it's 27-16 by the 12-minute mark of the fourth quarter. And and for all intents and purposes, the floodgates were open. Now, this is where, you have the armchair quarterback that says, how could this game have been different had we started E.J. Perry again instead of Jason Bean? Now, when you look back at the history of what led up to the championship game, nobody in their right mind is going to bench Jason Bean after the game he had against Orlando. I mean, so be an armchair quarterback. That's exactly what you're being as an armchair quarterback, because
Right.
Jason Bean was gonna play. Looking at what E.J. Perry was able to do once he came in the game, was he moving the ball, throwing it? No, but he was able to scramble, get him some yards to keep the chains moving, and he pumped some life into the crowd. That's the big difference that I don't see in a Jason Bean, and I'm just not a Jason Bean fan because I just think that he does not carry himself in a fashion that's going to rile the team up, get the fans going, get the momentum. I mean, he's just too timid in my eyes. And so, once again, I don't remember the exact point in the game, but Jason Bean scrambled, got within a yard or two of the first down, and he slid again. And now DC went on the next play and got a first down on third down, so it didn't matter. But at the time, it mattered.
Right.
And so I just think that, call it a character flaw, I just don't see Jason Bean as a leader. And, with Jordan Ta'amu getting a torn ACL so late in the season, the chances that he's going to be ready to play at the beginning of next season is probably slim and none. So if you're DC, you better have signed DJ Perry already, because I think he's more than capable of being that fill-in quarterback that's going to help DC bridge the gap until Jordan Ta'amu's back. But
I think he lacks the X factor of commanding leadership, I guess, for lack of a better term. It was alarming to me when I looked back over the series. I don't know if I realized it watching the game, but like the fact that DC didn't have a single successful pass play the entire third quarter, was just like, what? Like, I don't know if I've seen that in a single NFL pro game, let alone, a UFL game where you think you'd have a little bit more diversity in play calling and that sort of thing. That was alarming to me. I think the one attempted pass play they had was when Bean got sacked midway through the third. But, man, I mean, that right there speaks volumes, and it gives context, I guess, as to why they probably chose to pull him and put Perry in when they did. But, yeah, you make a good point about the whole armchair philosophy.
They didn't have a choice but to pull him because he doesn't have I don't know if I think he separated his shoulder because they had talked about last week. They popped it back into place.
Okay.
And then going into this game, they wanted him to wear a brace, and he turned it down and he just wanted to be taped. So when he got thrown down to the ground, it didn't look like it was that major when he got thrown to the ground in the third quarter. But I suppose at that point, when your shoulder's in that fragile a state, that it probably take much. But once he got injured again, there was no doubt he was coming out of the game. But, you know, you look at McCrane. McCrane came in late in the fourth quarter. He nails another 60-yarder for 4 points. McCrane and Brown, you know, I think Brown, he signed with the Saints this week. So he's for now anyway, he's with an NFL team. Got to think McCrane's going to get a shot. But McCrane nailing that 60-yarder late in the fourth quarter gave him a chance. And DC had the ball, and they were driving down the field. And I think EJ is going to live with that fourth down play for a little bit, because not only was it an inaccurate pass, but if you look at his progressions over on the right side of the field, he had a DC receiver just standing there completely wide open that would have walked in if he'd have thrown it to him. So
didn't he get injured last year? That's the reason that was it Perkins that led the Michigan in the championship game? I forgot. I thought EJ got injured like week 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I forgot what it was. That you'd have to. I would agree with you though. Like, you've got to be kicking yourself as a QB. It's like you've waited almost, I guess, over a year, really technically, for this opportunity again. Fate comes down and says, "Okay, we're going to let you play in another championship game on, you know, the team that beat you last year," and then you still just can't get it to.
Yeah, he was
self-confidence for sure. I would
pumped, man. He was pumped. But another thing that hurt DC that final drive, clock management, and they challenged a play earlier that cost them a timeout. So by the time the fourth quarter, you know, late in the fourth quarter rolled around, they had no timeouts. So whereas, you know, when they cut it to 27-20 and they kicked back to Louisville, there was still between 2 and 3 minutes left in the game. Well, they basically, for all intents and purposes, had to stop them on one series or it was over, because they had no way to stop the clock, and they just weren't able to do it. So really, I was really surprised. If you look back at the playoff games, Louisville and St. Louis, opening drive, St. Louis has a 3rd and 1. They hand the ball off straight ahead, get nothing. And then what do they do on 4th down when they're almost in midfield? They punt the ball away. Ultimate conservative at the beginning of the game. Contrast that with DC and Orlando. DC's driving the ball. They get down there and they get stopped on 4th. It's 4th and 7. They kick the field goal and make it. There's a penalty on the play. So now it's going to be 4th and 2. Now you tell me, after you've made a field goal and it's still going to be 4th and 2, every coach and their uncle would have just said, "Okay, I take the 3 that we're going to kick off." Harris takes the 3 points off the board and goes for it on 4th and 2. So the ultimate of going for it, to me, which excites your team, excites your fan base, gets everybody into the game. So then contrast that. So you got St. Louis, ultra conservative, ends up biting them in the ass. And Louisville played the exact same game against St. Louis. St. Louis was ahead at halftime. Louisville comes out, just keeps running, keeps wearing you down. It's like Louisville's recipe for winning is play turnover-free football and just wait for the other team to make the mistake. And that's exactly what that's what their whole deal was down the stretch, and it worked. St. Louis comes out, and then boom, Louisville, couple big plays, take the lead, game's over. You know, then they get in this championship game against DC, and Harris, who was very aggressive against Orlando, completely goes the opposite way in the championship game. He kicks those two. He not only kicks those two field goals the first half when he could have went for touchdowns, but then he almost got to midfield. It was a 4th and 1, and I'm sitting there watching the game, and I'm like, oh, he's going for it. This is go for the gusto Harris, man.
Right,
He's
right.
going for it. And he goes, you hear him on the sideline. They got him mic'd up. You can hear him say, we're going to go ahead and punt it. We're going to try and pin him deep. And I was like, oh my God, he changed his whole philosophy from 1 week to the next. And we saw the Harris that was big time conservative. And when you're playing a conservative offensive game plan, and then you mix turnovers in with that,
Oh yeah,
it just opens the door for
really
Louisville. And Louisville, once again, stirring the potion, man. They got the old pot of steaming. And before you know it, like I said, what do we got? We got Wheeler wheeling off the 44-yard run. You follow that up. Robinson has a run for a touchdown, and it's like lights out, game's over before you even. So hats off to Louisville. It worked. I mean, turnovers for the game. Louisville had 2 turnovers, but that was in the first half when DC really didn't
capitalize on those opportunities.
Didn't really take advantage of it. What was really abysmal for both teams that I saw, 3rd down conversions. DC was 2 for 12, and Louisville was 3 for 11. Both of them went 0 for on 4th downs. Time of possession was pretty even. Louisville had a couple sacks. DC didn't have any. But with DC not having any sacks, again, that's DC football, man. Is play defense, and the defense wasn't able to get them those big plays that they needed. But now, KJ, let's turn into stat guy. Let's talk about the stats or the lack thereof. Let's talk about the quarterbacks. Bean 3 for 8 for 19 yards. And that was well into the 3rd quarter before he got hurt. No touchdowns, no interceptions, passer rating of 45.8. EJ Perry comes in, and like I said, I felt like he gave the team a spark.
Right.
It looked like he was able to move him down the field, but he moved him with his legs because he rushed for 43 yards when he come in, 6.1 average.
Yeah.
But passing, 5 for 12, 50 yards, no touchdown, 1 interception, a passer rating of 19.4.
Yeah. Well, and to your point,
I mean, does it get any lower than 19.4? I don't think it goes much
lower.
lower.
No, definitely not. Not on the rating side for sure. Unless you just don't ever get a completion. But it's what's crazy is, to your point, it's like the stats are so bad, and even with, what was it, two more additional completions, EJ more than doubled the yardage that Bean was able to accomplish through the air. So, like, I mean, in that, I get your armchair quarterback comment. Like, it makes a lot of sense looking at that alone. It's like, okay, yeah, his overall completion sucked, but I mean, he was, from an efficiency standpoint, he was way more efficient in the short time frame he had. You could argue than Bean if you discount the one pick a little bit. If that's the only pick he throws all game, hypothetically speaking, it's like it's probably not going to be the thing that kills you per se. And yeah, I mean, I could see the whole retroactive, retrospect. Maybe Perry could have given them enough to get it done. Who knows?
So you look at Chandler Rogers. Now, Chandler Rogers is everything Louisville needed in a quarterback change because their emphasis was running the football.
Right.
And so Chandler Rogers comes in and he gave them that game manager that they needed to play mistake-free football and let Louisville win the games late. But let's look at his stats.
Yeah.
Chandler Rogers, 9 for 17, 81 yards, no touchdowns with 2 picks. His passer rating was 26.5. So out of the 3 quarterbacks in arguably the showcase of the best of the best of the best,
Right.
DC has a quarterback rating of 45.8 and 19.4, and Louisville has a 26.5. So I guess this, if nothing else, tells the league, talk to the NFL. Somehow we have to get the level of quarterback play better in this league.
Yeah.
When you have a showcase that you want viewership to be high, attendance to be high, butts in the seats, promoting the league, when they tune in to the game of this caliber, they've got to see better quarterback play than this.
Right.
But then again, now you turn around to the running backs for both teams. How would you like to come out of a game, Valladay, and find out that you averaged 27.8 yards per carry? He was 4 carries, 111 yards with 1 touchdown. That should have been 2. But that was bad. Deion Jackson, 11 carries, 56 yards. He had a 5.1 yard average. EJ Perry had a 6.1 yard average from 43 yards. Overall, they were 34 rushes for 180 yards, 5.3 yards per carry. So very, very, very respectable. You look over at, and they actually, I take that back. Excuse me. The 34 for 180 overall, that was Louisville's stats. The overall rushing stats for DC was 35 carries for 262 yards. So between the 3 of them, they averaged 7.5 yards per carry for DC. But when you look at Louisville, like I said, they had 34 carries, 180 yards, 2 touchdowns, but they had the big plays. They had the big plays when they needed them. They got the big Wheeler 44-yard touchdown. They got the Robinson 16-yard touchdown. And that was their mantra against St. Louis too, in their playoff game with St. Louis, is big plays by the running backs. Sealed the deal. So, after we go over after we talk about the quarterbacks, is there really any need to go over wide receiver stats? The big receiver for DC was Cornell Powell, 3 catches, 40 yards, no touchdowns. Tariq Black for Louisville had 1 catch for 40 yards. So when you're talking about a most valuable player in the game, you look at it and you probably say, if it's DC that wins this game, then it's probably Valladay that gets the most valuable player. If it's Louisville that wins the game, they really had nobody else but Wheeler that could get the MVP. So it made perfect sense how they did that. But it was between the pregame, like I said, the media attention, the game itself, the atmosphere of the game, halftime performance. Personally, I think Nelly would have done a better job.
He did a good job during the regular season. I'll give you that.
I think Nelly would have done a better job for a halftime show. And it seems like Mike Rapoli's into rap. So if you're into rap,
Submit your artist recommendations.
Consider bringing Nelly in there.
There you go.
But anyway, so kind of as an overall impression of the game, KJ, I think everybody kind of knows how I feel. It was a great year for the league. I think that the championship game could have been so much better than what it was, but it still had the excitement. It still had the big plays. It's still, so you can't take that away from it. But what were your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was enjoyable. I agree with you. I think for the folks out there, and I've heard a few, whether it be through X, Facebook, social media, but some have made the comment about we're still missing that pedigree of quarterback play across the league that we saw in 2020 XFL or whatever, dating back to kind of the dawn of spring ball, if you will, and in the modern era. I think that's definitely something worth visiting for the league if they're able to do it or somehow financially swing it, whether it's through negotiations with the NFL, like you mentioned, or just trying to create more of a tiered structure in the pay scale, because I know they've gone back since the merger. I think they've gone back to a fairly uniform, pay structure for all players. There's not really a scaled hierarchy based on your positional class or position group. So that may be something they want to relook at and reconsider if this is not what they want to see as kind of the trending norm for future playoff runs.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and take a break and hear from our sponsor. When we come back, we will kind of talk about some other things. We can wrap up, talk on the championship game, but we can also get into some NFL signings. There were several of them, got quite a list to go over. So let's take a break, and we'll talk about it on the other end. Yeah, I've got to see a couple of pressers with Coach Redmond since his championship, and you can tell he's still on cloud nine. But the more and more they talk about the Redmond family and the name that it carries in Louisville, the more appreciation you get just for how thankful he is to be the head coach of the Louisville Kings, because he was asked, and the presser, one of the media people asked him if he was interested in going to college coaching or taking a position in the NFL, and he more or less, without saying it, said that he was more than happy to stay in Louisville. And I think with his father, with the reputation the name has in the city and the high school football, I think he probably does want to stay put. I see a guy that finally decided to get home for the day. Was there.
Maybe.
Man, he bugged out again already.
Phone glitch.
Phone
You
glitch.
know, I think to your point, Ed, with respect to all the coaching hires we had this past offseason, and I would say this, I'd still say this. I think even if they didn't, maybe even they lost against St. Louis, for instance, in the semifinals. Redmond probably was the best. They tried to focus on regional hires. Kevin Sumlin having a Houston tie, A&M, history, kind of regional context of the coach and knowledge base with the fan base or broader populace of where the team plays. I think Redmond was probably the best local hire out of all the new coaches that were brought in or brought back. If it was someone who had a previous spring ball experience in the entire league, and it shows that it was a small no thing, but one thing I noted on X, I think it was either the same day or the very next day after the championship game, and I don't recall seeing this in any past UFL offseason before with any team, but seeing, and I know he has playing history there, so maybe it's less of a big deal than I'm making it out to be, but I still think it was a big deal. The Baltimore Ravens had retweeted something from, I think, either Chris's direct profile or the Kings profile, congratulating Coach Redmond on his win. And that to me spoke volumes, because to see any form of, internal NFL team acknowledgement of the UFL, that's a bridge we've never seen, crossed or even built, in my opinion. So that's speaking as a good preface or a pre-marker to what may be to come in the future as this league continues to grow and develop.
Yeah, and I think it's only going to be better for both leagues if the NFL and the UFL kind of try to put their heads together and come up with a solution on what's best.
For sure.
I think that as we talked about before the show started, as to what we see as a possible future coming up for next year and the years after that, as I said to you, I think that they've already named Oklahoma City as the 9th team. We're still waiting for them to come out with the 10th team. I think there's going to be another reload or two, but I think that if that happens, I almost think that they're going to wait, play next season. If I was a betting man, I'd bet that they're going to keep all teams in place, try and play next season out to get that back-to-back consistency without change. But then I think in 28, when they have the 2 expansion teams start playing, then I think that year they also make whatever final moves they're going to make for reloads, if there's going to be any.
Right.
And then 28, they run with what they've got. And, that's my thoughts anyway. But we've been pretty much been able to get this season out of the head coaches that they're all on 2-year contracts. So I think that you're probably going to see, probably some changes in some supporting assistant coach positions, whether there's offensive, defensive coordinators, linebacker, whatever. But I think the head coaches are going to stay in place. Is that your thoughts as well?
I could see it taking place for continuity's sake, for sure. Speaking from the fan side of things, I think for me in Houston, I prefer to see more turnover change than that. But I get why they would want to try to establish some form of continuity, at least in terms of the kind of peak leadership role on the coaching side for every team. So, we'll see how it all plays out.
So then the other conversation to have is how are they going to handle the rosters? Now, to me, I think redrafting is not the solution. I think that if you want to have some continuity with coaches, you need to have some continuity with players. So I don't know what that protected list looks like. I think the protected list has to be more than 10. I think that, if they want to continue that college, so many slots for the area colleges like they did, that's okay. I don't have any problem with that. But sure. I think the protected list of 10 needs to be more like the 20 to 30 range that they can protect. And then
Have they alluded to maintaining that into next season, Ed?
the 10.
Yeah, or just any
No,
form.
they haven't made any comment whatsoever. I'm just totally.
I'm wondering if that was just unique to the kind of quasi restructuring, since we had, Michigan and San Antonio depart last year. I feel like that's part of what that was a consequence of that, essentially. I think from an operational standpoint, you'll just see what we saw in a lot of past seasons, which is for the prominent players that don't get picked up by an NFL squad, or even the ones that get picked up and then subsequently, end of August, when the regular season for the NFL starts, guys that don't last beyond September, October and get re-released. Some of those guys may re-sign again, but that's in the fall is typically when you see this part of the summer and through the fall, I should say, for the guys that didn't get picked up in the NFL, you'll see the teams, re-sign the same player. They may release a few as well, but when they re-sign them, I think that essentially relocks them in even all the way through at least the start of next season for the UFL. So I don't think that we'll have a blocked or reserve list, if you will. I would think in my eyes, it'll be more how they balance, to your point, re-signing folks, enforcing, if that's the right word, the regional kind of tie of certain players and the college ties with each player in the league. But I think that will come more from maybe your free agents who get picked up, who've never played maybe in the UFL before, and some of the guys coming out of college who, don't get snagged up through this fall or kept or retained this fall through NFL play.
And then, of course, the union contract for the players is up, so that has to be addressed. So that's a potential sticking point, and hopefully that goes smooth and we don't have any kind of work stoppage, because we definitely don't need that. But one thing that Coach Neuheisel was talking about with Dallas that he wanted to have addressed in the offseason, and I wholly agree with him, and I hope they do, is they have roster size of 50, but they only have 43 active for a game.
Right.
And the 7 that aren't active are not only not active, but they're not putting film together. They're not making any money. And so I think it's important that they waive that 7-player rule and have it be 50-man roster, 50-man active. Now, what that does, depending on what kind of a bargaining agreement they sign, does that potentially make raise the wages or the salaries so high that it's too big of a bite of the elephant in 1 year? I don't know that. I don't know the answer to that. But I would definitely like to see the roster size expanded. I think you kind of started seeing some players falling off towards the end of the year, especially injury-wise. I know I saw signings the last 2-3 weeks of the regular season, bringing guys in off the street that hadn't played any for the whole season. It's kind of hard to get them into game shape, get them into games, and have them be productive when they need it the most. And so, I know the St. Louis Battlehawks brought in Abdul Beecham. I think it was after week 6. They spent the next 2 weeks getting him into game shape. And I think he played week 9 and week 10. Well, he's still in his preseason when the playoffs started. So I think that there has to be a little bit of an addressing to that. But looking forward to the NFL season coming up, it's really looking promising for a lot of the UFL players. In fact, let me part the Red Sea and I'll put up the list that we've got so far. Here we go. I added another one in front of me, but first question is going to be for you, KJ, when I'm looking at this list. And it seemed like when the NFL first started signing players, or at least bringing them in for workouts, It was a Houston Gambler or Us group of guys that were brought in. So when you look at the signings so far, you've got safety Major Burns signing with the Dolphins, as is offensive tackle Gottlieb. Jesus, I don't even know how to say it. Desi, Desi played in all 10 games. He had all UFL honors. You had wide receiver Caden Davis of the Houston Gamblers going to the Bears. You had defensive back Amir Speed going to the Cowboys. You had quarterback Hunter Deckers, who appeared in 5 games, threw for 749 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think he ran into injury problems.
Yep.
He signed with the Saints. You got wide receiver Jalen Moreno Cropper. He was a return specialist along with a wide receiver. He played in 7 games. He averaged 42.6 yards per kick return, so that was pretty impressive, along with 22 receptions for 291 yards. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Houston Gamblers that are already signed to NFL teams. So my question for you, KJ, is how did Houston not do better for the season?
I mean, I'm going to be honest and say I think it was a lot of self-inflicted wounds, primarily from team management. I'll die on the hill. I think we were cheated out of the Louisville game just because of the lack of a field goal replay. But outside of that, I mean, most of all of it was on our own onus to just stand and deliver, failing. Still, I think to this season as well, just as it has been in years past, red zone efficiency was one of our biggest struggle points. And then just certain managerial things that I feel like that kind of errs towards the whole point I made earlier about preferring, from a fan perspective, to maybe see some turnover with respect to Sumlin. I think we saw his ceiling in 22 when he was with the USFL. We didn't really see, I mean, outside of his proficiency against the Stallions, which I'm happy to know and see for our team, I mean, there wasn't much improvement in the grand scheme of things if you compare it to that year. But outside of that, I mean, I'm glad we got a lot of guys drafted. They had good gameplay, all things considered. Defense every year seems to be a knockout of the ballpark almost, and it's always up to our offense to really stand and deliver, and we just unfortunately couldn't do it this year as well. But I think for me, out of everybody on this list, I would say definitely excited to watch and see how Major Byrne does. Hunter Deckers would be the other one, specifically speaking on our Houston guys. And then on your behalf, and I think the whole league, a lot of super fans across the league will probably be watching this guy because we've been talking so long, preaching about he needs a chance, he needs a shot. Finally seeing Butler get signed by somebody and seeing the Broncos pick him up is super exciting. And I hope he's able to find great success there because that's a prominent team that could use some wide receivers, aid.
So looking at, and we have another one of our co-hosts joining us, Brett. Nice to see you finally called it a day at work, huh?
Man, I would have been on about 20 minutes ago, but I had to. It wouldn't let me in, so I had to do an update. And so I've been updating for about 20 minutes, so you can imagine how happy I am about that.
So as we talked about 6 signings so far for the Houston Gamblers, you can say a lot too about the Columbus Aviators. They've got Tony Fields signing with the Bears. They've got Jacoby Windman signing with the Steelers. Windman had 3.5 sacks and a forced fumble in the 3 games that he played. You've got offensive lineman Chris Glazer signing with the Cowboys. Chris Glazer took 430 snaps and played in all 10 games. Columbus Aviators Tay Martin, 10 games, 42 receptions, 483 yards and 2 touchdowns. He signed with the Detroit Lions. And you've got Antoine Wells, wide receiver and return specialist. He had 237 yards and 2 TDs receiving and 205 punt return yards. So even though you had, they finished towards the bottom of the league, obviously they had talent on their roster. So with Houston and Columbus both, brighter days ahead for those two teams. Now, whether, it's going to be interesting to see how many of these players stick on the NFL teams, but you have any thoughts, Brett, so far on the two teams I've talked about?
Well, the interesting stat I saw today was, I want to say there was 23 UFL guys that had signed through July 13th of last year. And we've had 20 signed as of today. And, you're seeing Adam Schefter talk about it and some other people. It's a really good sign that, like we had said, I thought the quality of play was really good this year. And that's why I was anxious, kept looking and digging, trying to find out what the TV ratings were from Saturday in the championship game, but there was a bunch of naysayers, with the College World Series and the World Cup and all that going on. But we'll see. I would be shocked if it's not quite a bit more than what it was last year. But, yeah, man, it's a positive sign. I think we're going to see a heck of a lot more names signed from the teams you'd already mentioned and some other teams, whether it be, Birmingham, some more from D.C., Louisville, Orlando. I'm a big fan of Isaiah Buggs, and he's got to be on the NFL roster this year. And if he's not signed, that tells him all he needs to know, that he's blackballed in the league.
So did you guys see this comment? If you did, I'll let you both answer. Chucky's asking, he says we should all be covering the CFL now.
No. No. I do follow, you can probably tell by my accent, Chucky, I'm a redneck. I'm from Alabama. But I do watch the CFL, and I have, watched it since a little kid.
Well, I was waiting for you two to answer. This is what I was hearing.
Yeah.
I'm open to cover it, but I always felt like I was a black sheep, and I know I don't necessarily feel like I would be the one to. Well, I'd be happy to lead that charge, as I can empathize with Ed's conundrum a lot of times when Brett and I are, running down to the wire to get on with him on these shows week to week or what have you. I wouldn't want to solo run that ship. Let's just put it that way. So
no.
So let's run through a couple more teams of signings. The Denver Broncos have signed two St. Louis Battlehawks. As KJ mentioned earlier, Hakeem Butler, 29 receptions, 641 yards, and 3 touchdowns, and we got Offensive Player of the Year. They also signed a cornerback, Sean Fresh Jr. from the St. Louis Battlehawks. Then we've got the DC Defenders. Their wide receiver, oh my God, is Zuka Ma. Anyway,
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, he had 959 all-purpose yards for DC, so that was pretty impressive. They also Devonta Maxwell signed with the Falcons. He had 4 sacks, 23 tackles, and 7 tackles for loss. Let's see. We've got the Dallas Renegades, cornerback Shaun Wade. 3 interceptions, 24 tackles in 8 games with 9 pass breakups. He signed with the Eagles. You've got the Louisville Kings. Lucky Jackson, who was with the Minnesota Vikings on their practice squad the last 2 seasons. And he was brought up a couple different times for a game or two. But Lucky Jackson is signed with the Detroit Lions, as is teammate Tariq Black. And then another teammate who we all know well from being able to kick it from one end to the other. Louisville kicker Tanner Brown has signed with the Saints. So you put him in a controlled environment, no wind to contend with, no telling how far this guy can kick a ball.
Yep. I think he's fixing to get him a big contract, and good for that kid. What a pressure kicker this year.
Yeah, he may be a good voice for the UFL because in our rules, because I'm sure when he's with the Saints, he'll be trying to convince them that there needs to be 4-point field goals, right?
Hey, it worked out this year. I thought it was neat, and it was it worked out great. Of course, my team, I don't even know if they kicked a 50-yard field goal this year, but I thought it was good for the league. I really liked it. Excited to see what the future holds.
And then the lone Orlando Storm player, defensive end Keyshawn Banks, signed with the Atlanta Falcons. So I think when we look at these signings, like Brett said, we're already well ahead of last year's pace. But I think what even helped these players more is with the season getting over so late, mini camps are pretty much over with by the time these players are done with their season. So they don't get the opportunity to participate in these mini camps is because I think the release date for the UFL is June 15th. Am I right, Brett?
Yeah.
I think
this year.
15th. So if you could put these players, with these NFL teams a week earlier or 2 weeks earlier, it could be even more of a game changer. As we talked about what we'd like to see for next year, and Brett, to kind of bring you up to speed, I had mentioned the fact that I feel like the UFL needs to upgrade the quarterback playing field, whether that's an agreement with the NFL to get access to practice squad quarterbacks or what exactly that is. But, as I talked about the championship game, you had three quarterbacks in the championship game who had quarterback passer ratings of 45.8, 19.4, and 26.5. That's just not good enough if you want to bring attention to the league. And, you get viewers and butts and seats, and they want to see, what's this UFL all about? I just think the quarterback position needs to have higher quality of play than what was shown.
Well, I mean, Oliver Luck had mentioned that, harped on that with XFL 2020. But I will say this: I think the league this year in general, the quarterback play was pretty good. Yeah, it got a little wonky there at the end with some injuries, but that's going to happen. You could put 8 third stringers from the NFL, captain of these teams, but that don't mean they're going to make it through the season. Things happen. It's football. But I do feel like some bigger names, and Rapoli's mentioned it. He's mentioned it on quite a few shows. Other guys have mentioned it, like I said, and I keep going back, and like I was messaging Rapoli from the get-go. If you want to know, how spring football league really needs to be ran, in my opinion, go back and look at XFL 2020. I mean, if you could copy as much of everything they did on and off the field, still got a cult-like following, and the XFL's gone now. It's merged with the USFL, and now we have the third year of the UFL. Quarterback play could definitely be improved some, but I do think starting the season 2, 3, 4 weeks earlier than what we have in the past would make a difference. And why not give it a shot? You've had fans harping about that shit since 2020. So give it a try. What's it going to hurt? One season you start 3, 4 weeks ahead of where you've been starting, and just see how things go. You just have so many people that's on vacations and doing other things in May and June.
Can you verify, Brett, that Marty is a Dallas Cowboy fan?
I can't repeat what I told him yesterday about the Cowboys, but God damn.
I'm posting his what he put in the comment line about the Dallas Cowboys signings. I almost had to put another monitor on top of the one I got just to get it all to fit. So, but
yeah, bless his heart, he's a Cowboys fan, but bless all of our hearts right now, none of our teams are doing great.
Yeah, Marty's at the point right now where Dallas fans are at every year where he thinks they got a shot to win it all. And then something always goes terribly wrong. But Marty, before you get mad at me for making that comment, just also know that I'm a lifelong 53, almost 54 years now. I've been a Vikings fan since I was 8 years old. And the clock is ticking on me, my friend. And I don't know that I'm going to see a championship in my day. But we'll see. Now that I got a bad ticker, the urgency is even more. So you never know when the light's going to go dim on this guy right here. So what other areas? I think that when we talked about the getting rid of the 7 inactives on the 50-man roster, if it's feasible from a salary standpoint, because of the 7 extra salaries you got to pay on game day, plus the renegotiation of the new union contract coming up. I don't know what their financial position is, but Brett's been a in the trenches guy this whole season with the UFL. And as you talk about offensive line and defensive line play, I got to believe that those extra spots on the roster, especially depth-wise, would surely help these teams on game day.
I anticipate the pay to be increased for quarterbacks. I don't know. Rapoli is so transparent. I don't know how transparent he's going to be willing to be about that. But that's another thing the XFL 2020 did, if y'all recall, is the quarterbacks got paid 2 or 3 times what the other position players got paid. And I know that can create issues inside the locker room, but I mean, it is what it is. And I do think rosters will, as many times as I've heard Kevin Summerlin, AJ, Neuheisel, and personal conversations I've had or in post-game interviews, they have mentioned that religiously. And I believe Rapoli is going to listen to them. I know they're looking at potential venues right now, I guess this week and next week. I imagine following that, if they're not already this week, they're going to be talking about things like roster sizes. But I do really anticipate the active roster sizes to increase. I don't know if it'll go to 50. I would imagine a minimum would probably be 48, which is still five more guys than what's been on the field the last 3 seasons. So I do anticipate that to increase. And extra bodies on the field is definitely going to help. I mean, it's crazy. Each team seems like they have one position grouping that just kills them. Last year for Birmingham, it was quarterbacks. This year it was offensive line. St. Louis was secondary. I think last year with St. Louis, it was linebackers. It's just funny how that goes. And one team, I can't even remember who it was last year, lost, I think, 4 of your best 6 defensive linemen. It's weird how that works. So a couple of extra bodies out there on each side of the ball would not hurt at all.
So, KJ, did you say that you pay attention to the Canadian Football League?
I would say I follow it as well, probably not as religiously as Brett has for as long, but over the past year or two, I've definitely gotten into it.
Do you guys have any idea? Because I do not. That's why I'm asking. Do you guys have any idea what their salary ranges are?
Oh, it's 3X, I would say, UFL at a minimum. I know this
Yeah,
because I have a close friend
it's
who's an
2.5 to 3 times, but the issue is, I want to say that's in Canadian dollars, and then now I might be wrong, but then that's on an 18-game schedule too. So these old boys have to play a lot of games.
Their season is longer. Yeah, they start in
18 games, and then
through
6 out of 9 teams make the playoffs.
Yeah,
I think last year 8 of the 9 made the playoffs. It's good quality football. I like the fact that it's been around a really long time. They've got really good, strong foundation, fan bases. I know the cellar dweller the last few years have been Edmonton, and I still call them the Eskimos. I can't remember what the hell they renamed them to with all that woke bullshit, but whatever. I pull for Edmonton because they've went through and they're finally, seem like they're getting their feet under them. Although I think we're in week 3 or 4 now, and I haven't even checked the results thus far. It's just tough for us to cover the CFL because it cuts into the UFL and then it cuts into fall ball too because the season is so long. So I don't know how we would ever. And I like the CFL. I like the different rules. There's a couple things I do not like. I'm a big defense guy. They line up. The defensive line has to line up a full yard off the offensive line, which I think is total BS. I think it's too big of an unfair advantage for the offenses. But I'm all for it, but it's just not logistically speaking, it's not really possible for us. We'd have to have a whole nother night, a whole nother crew to cover it.
Yeah, the champ said it's the Elks. The
Elks. That's right.
He also asked this question, Brett. What do you think about the Detroit stadium being delayed?
I did not know that.
I think Rapoli already knew that news. Now, of course, it was just made public, yesterday or today. But I pay attention to everything the man says in interviews. I've caught things he said that other people didn't when he was at the Derby in Kentucky. I try to catch everything, all of his ex-posts, but he'll do an interview with just about anyone. And I've caught that is one city in the last 10 months he hasn't mentioned once. And me and one of the UFL fans got into it today about it. I'm like, look, he ain't mentioned Michigan in 10 months. Trust me, Rapoli can't help himself. He's pretty much like me. What you see is what you get. He don't keep secrets. So if Michigan was really in the hunt and in the running to be one of the teams in 2028, you would have done heard him say it. And I hate that because I like Michigan and I want the Panthers to be back, but you can't hinge a season on, well, it's delayed and we'll get it going, spring. You can't do that, especially with the extreme weather in Detroit. Right. Hell, they could have 6 months of just dreadful winter and really slow things down. And while we're on this subject, guys, I did some looking into the cities that he repeated the other day, and I did some stadium hunting along with some other things, and I'm not too big a fan. I was a lot more excited with, Des Moines, Omaha. I've been huge on Oklahoma and Oklahoma City for probably half a dozen years. I'm really if he's willing to put the money in it, I really like him going West Coast. despite the taxes and all the crazy laws out there. That's if he's willing to do it. If he says, look, I'm going out west, screw it. All right, fine. I'm all for it. But those two cities with Utah or Salt Lake City and Boise, I'm really, really, really concerned about those two. I don't think they're what he's looking for. I don't think they're another Columbus. I don't think they're another Louisville. I've looked into New Mexico stadiums, and guys, there just ain't really much there. And then you start looking at the populations, and I've also looked at the South Carolina and those two potential. Honestly, I think with him being from Queens or Brooklyn, wherever he's from, in that stadium, that soccer stadium right next to Yankee Stadium, I say go for it. Their laws ain't quite as bad as California. Their taxes aren't quite as high. I'm just not real comfortable with the Utah and the Boise scene. Although, I was concerned about Louisville until they had their first pep rally, and I was like, you know what, this shit's gonna work, And I've got some Kentucky buddies that's helped me run that SEC group for a dozen years, and they were real high on Louisville. So it wasn't one of my top markets, but it's definitely worked.
So we got a question from one of the viewers here. He says, how about San Antonio, El Paso, Austin, Reno, or Carson City?
Real big concerns on those. I'm high. Let me tell you on the West Coast where I'm real high on it, and I have been for years. Portland. Portland's a great sports town. They support their soccer team. They support their basketball team. They've got a perfect soccer venue where the Timbers play in Portland. And at the time, we thought Seattle was coming back, and then all of a sudden, we found out the World Cup, and that just wasn't doable. And Rapoli's just not going to put another team in a 60-something thousand seat stadium. But Portland, I've always been high on because I thought it would be an instant rivalry with Seattle. I'm Oakland. It's another city that has had all their pro teams taken away. They're looking at a soccer venue. They've bidded on a soccer venue. Nothing has been decided on that yet. Otherwise, they'd have to play at the old Coliseum. Or San Diego with Snapdragon Stadium, another city that had their NFL team taken away. But again, those are two California cities, and not to get political, but their tax laws and their workman's comp laws and all that is freaking out the roof out there. It's running off normal, everyday, average businesses that are going to different states, but because of the high taxes. So I'm concerned about that. Boise, I just don't like it. They've had a really good cult-like following with their college team for, gosh, what, fellas, probably 15, 20 years now. And I still can't recall 2-3 times where that little stadium was filled. I just don't. And then where I'm really burnt on Salt Lake City is, their team had horrible attendance in 2019 with the AAF. I don't know. I'm trusting Rapoli. I would have to do some more digging on, Carson City and some of the other cities you had mentioned. I keep hearing from West Coast folks. What is he saying, Ed?
He comes back and he followed you up with the San Diego, so you guys were on the same page there. But he says here, what are your guys' thoughts on St. Louis or Columbus? I don't know exactly what he's asking here, but
they're definitely staying. They're not going anywhere. I think both markets. I mean, we don't even have to mention St. Louis. That is what it is. Everybody strives to be St. Louis with spring football. Columbus, I think, is going to be a really good market. I mean, it was year one, but I'll say this, that the fans still pretty much came out and supported that team, and the team was bad. The team for most of the season was the worst team in the league until I think Birmingham with the injuries piled up, and Birmingham kind of took that over at the end. I really like Columbus, and I love St. Louis. I still think St. Louis is liable in 2 or 3 years to end up in that soccer stadium. I don't want to get in a big debate or fight over that. I think it's possible. What other? Let me throw this at you guys. Each one of y'all, since we're on the subject real quick, and we could talk about expansion till we're blue in the face or relocation. Give me a city, Ed, that you think would be just a guaranteed winner, and KJ, you do the same.
I mean, I'll touch on the one I was going to circle back to answer Anthony's question, but it answers yours as well. And this, I think, would be only plausible from the standpoint of a relocation occurring. I don't want Houston to leave Houston, but, God forbid the Gamblers just don't produce any positive change this next year. Austin's a slam dunk. I mean, it just is. If you move them and relocate them, they're going to blow Houston out of the water. It's the perfect type of city that has exponential population growth and has nothing in terms of pro sports outside of the soccer team.
Yeah.
So it goes to the cult-like following you would get. I don't know how many, I forget the Louisville's MLS team that's there, the Purple Squad, whatever they are. I don't know how many more fans rolled over to come to the Kings games. I imagine some did, but it's just the fact that you're playing in the same venue, I think, makes it that much more hospitable to kind of the culture, so to speak. It doesn't have to be, all football diehards, and you're not gonna fill a stadium with just diehards anyways.
But don't you think, as Anthony mentioned, the San Antonio, El Paso, and the Austin, don't you think maybe there's a little Texas fatigue in this league?
Well, that's why I say it would only make sense. It would only make sense from a relocation standpoint. They're never going to add another city at this point. With the structure of the league, I 100% agree with that, and I think it would be a bad move, 100%. El Paso, there's no way. The town is stupid small. They don't have it. I mean, I've been there. I'd recommend Lubbock before I recommended El Paso, and I hate the Red Raiders. So it's just
the main reason why I think St. Louis will stay in the Dome is because it gives the league a safety net. And when I say safety net, I mean the Dome is not a soccer stadium. So as long as St. Louis is in the Dome, they get dibs. St. Louis doesn't have a problem with scheduling.
That's true.
So you always know that the Dome is available for a championship game. Now, whether you want to have it there or not is another thing, and we can get into that debate some other day and some other year. Sure. I don't care. But it gives.
You don't ever have to worry about weather either.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about weather. And when we talk about the championship game of the UFL year in and year out, do I think that they need to name the venue of the championship game early enough to drum up business, whether it be fans able to get tickets or whatnot.
Sure.
I was listening to another show earlier today, and it made a lot of sense when I actually thought about it. When you look at the league, if you're the number one seed in the UFL, what does it get you? I mean, it gets you the incentive of supposedly a first-round home game, but when you're playing in venues that you don't have top priority in, you're not even guaranteed home playoff games.
Yeah, look at Orlando. Look at the Panthers the last couple of years. San Antonio.
So do you come up with some kind of a rule or a league change of a rule? But again, you're still fighting the scheduling. What incentive can you give the number one seed? Well, you can say that the United Bowl is in their hometown for that year. Or, I mean, I don't I don't know. It kind of seems to me like the number one seed in the league doesn't get a real big advantage that they should have for winning the league. But I think that they really need to address how they determine where the championship game is going to be. And I know Brett and I went back and forth during the season, and it's like, God, name a championship location, would you please?
Well, KJ can verify this, and I'm not letting you off the hook, by the way, Ed. I know it's your show, but KJ gave me a city. You got to give me a city. But real quick, KJ, when I started hammering Rapoli's ass on X, what was it, about 2 or 3 days in a row? All of a sudden, it's announced that it was DC, and I don't think I played a part in that. I think everybody else that had started joining in on that parade had played a part in that. Because I'm like, look, we need to know.
We heard rumors from before the season kicked off. I mean, I think this was more of a logistical. They just had to get everything, all the I's dotted and T's crossed. It wasn't a question of them undecided on where they wanted to do it. It was, okay, can we get everything set up so that it is a full green light go? And that's really where this delay came from. And it's probably the nuance of they couldn't get it locked in before the season started, and the season started, so their entire league-wide focus shifted to, okay, manage the season, and unfortunately that probably hit a back burner to some extent. Not that it should have, but it just was conflict of the timing. So hopefully that component will definitely improve in years ahead.
Yeah.
So getting back to me, Brett, with my choice.
By the way, I think Austin is fantastic, KJ, and I think it's a can't miss.
I'm gonna live and die on the Omaha.
I knew it. That's like he's gonna echo him.
I kind of knew it too. Yeah.
But the reasoning is I think that when you look at our league right now, okay, I'm going to be retired next year, and I know there's a handful of fans, St. Louis fans, that I know hit the road and they go to all the away games. Well, my God, you're going to Houston, you're going to DC.
Right.
And the distance between teams is so far that I think that every dot you can put on the UFL map that bridges the gap between cities and makes them more doable not only creates more butts in the seats from natural rivalries, but just makes it to where, okay, you put Oklahoma City in. Now, if you get in Omaha, you got St. Louis, Omaha, Oklahoma City, Louisville. They all start being drivable.
True, yes. Yeah.
And you're not always jumping on a plane. I mean, if we add a Boise and we add, like Brett says, Portland or something, what have you got? I mean, shit, you're going even farther.
No, you would have to add 2 teams on the West Coast, in my opinion, to make it make sense.
Yeah.
I would say
I'm just not a fan at all of Boise or Utah. And I would promote it, but I would be really worried because I feel like Omaha could be a diamond in the rough of poor man's Louisville until the only thing we went back and forth on this, me and Ed and Eric, because we're all high on Omaha. And I started digging, and we started digging, trying to figure out what stadium. And I want to say that was the only hiccup. And then Des Moines got mentioned, and Des Moines is fixing to build a soccer stadium.
Well, and Omaha is too. Omaha's.
Oh, are they? Okay. I couldn't remember because I kept digging and.
Omaha is supposed to. The last I saw a couple weeks ago, they were in the final stages of getting approval for a soccer stadium that was going to open up in the 28th season, which would be right in line. But no, I if I was a betting man, I'd put all my money on New York because I think that I agree with you, Brett. I think that he likes the St. John's.
Yeah, these early phases.
He's got a, we all know that he's got Louisville ties, and so if I'm a betting man, I'm saying New York is probably the next team that's going to be put into the league.
And I think when it comes to to viewership and eyes, I think it would be a good move. Expense wise, I don't know how much more expensive it would be to have a team there as opposed to, one of these other cities we mentioned. I imagine it would be twice as expensive, if not more, because those two stadiums are pretty nice new stadiums in expensive areas. But unfortunately, Austin, I've heard him mention that 3 times now, and that really sticks with me because, like I said, he's pretty much what you see is what you get, and he puts his ideas on the table and waits for people to react and comment about them. And Austin is one that has came up every time, no matter who he's talked to. But it would definitely be a relocation. There will not be 3 teams in Texas, even if we're talking about 10 teams in 2012. I just don't see it because of what happened in San Antonio with the venue, and then what happened with what's going on with Dallas and Houston. But I do feel like, and I'll stand on this hill, if they would do some real local marketing there in those 2 cities, they're so huge, you can't help but get 10, 15,000 in the seats. That's just my opinion.
So do you think that Champ here is asking about if it is New York, what we think the nickname would be?
It'll be.
They bring back the Guardians?
Yeah, I was going to say the New York Guardians.
They're already proven he has no interest in bringing back old names aside from the Houston offshoot, which was just he didn't want to carry over the past UFL 2.0 iteration team branding. Outside of that, he's done no incentives whatsoever to bring back classic names. So I think he's going to keep on that kind of egotistical entrepreneurial mindset. And I don't mean that to be negative, but it's his baby. So I don't think they're
New York Rapolios.
I wouldn't go that far, but I mean, he might be something stupid like Liberty or whatever's regionally acquiesced and culturally relevant to the greater NYC area kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I hate it too because the Guardians from 2020 that was a badass logo, and that was really, again, XFL 2020. Just about everything they did was on the money.
Well, but when let's roll back the tape. The reason why I asked you guys the question on the CFL salaries is because as we looked at, I think year over year, you guys would agree that the talent level in the UFL definitely went up. If we see that there's more and more players getting a valid shot of getting on with an NFL team.
Yeah. To be fair,
there's going to be
the CFL, but I mean, I think they're making strides in the right direction to catch up if you compare the numbers, so to speak.
I think that the UFL becomes a more serious place for football players that think that they can get a legitimate shot to the NFL. It just comes down to the best of the best talent that's not in the NFL probably continues to still go to the CFL until they can start bridging that gap in salaries.
Right. I agree. I'd say our homework is
going to year 4 and we have all the stability in the world. I mean, that's a good sign that, there for the first 2-3 years, are they coming back? Are they coming back? We're not talking about that anymore.
I think our homework as show contributors, and this includes Eric since he's not on here, he'll watch this at some point, I'm sure. Over the course of this offseason, we should all religiously study and get well acquainted with the MLS major league team map and the upcoming teams that are new to be added, and just come in our first show back when we hit on anything UFL related. We've got to pick our top 3-5 projected expansion teams, and then we can merge them all and give the bottom lines these are our top choices kind of thing. That would be make the most sense to me. We know we're probably sticking with the soccer venue thing. That ain't changing. So that's the best foundational point I think to work from and hypothesize in all this.
Well, do we think there's going to be any teams relocated next year, or are they going to stick with continuity and bring all the same 8 teams back?
KJ and I talked about that earlier in the show, and the fact that
the coach.
I gave my opinion that I think next year they go with continuity and they don't make any changes next year. But I think the following year, when they have the 2 expansion teams start up, that's the year that if they're going to do any relocation, they do the relocation, do it all in one big bang, and go with it.
Yeah.
So I think that next year, I think you see all 8 teams back next year.
I kind of do too. I would be kind of surprised if we didn't. Although I know Birmingham is an issue with the venue, and I still get. I can't tell you how many people call, text, or message me on Facebook. The final game that night and the next day, and I just told all of them the same thing. I do not see them back at Protective Stadium next year. So
I saw a post today. Brett, maybe you know the answer to this question. Someone posted, how in the hell did a 50-some thousand seat stadium end up being built in Birmingham? What was it built for?
the original deal with that, and my dad lived in the Birmingham area forever, and Tarrant, before Tarrant got to be a bad area. They had talked since I was a little kid about building a dome in Birmingham, and the mayor back then was so hell bent on it. And if you recall what happened in Minnesota with when the dome fell through or whatever, that it was close. It was close to the Vikings coming to Birmingham, but Birmingham with the the crooked politician and everything, they couldn't ever make a deal on building a dome. And that went on for years and years and years. And then they're like, fine, we're not going to do a big dome. We're not going to get an NFL team here. So let's just do something newer and better. And you go from where Legion Field was 89,000, but it's totally in disrepair. And it's in the worst part of Jefferson County, worst part of Birmingham, and probably the second worst spot in Alabama. It's just not a good area. And where they put Protective is a really good area. KJ's been there a couple times. They've put Top Golf in there. They put a bunch of new restaurants and sports bars in there. They've done a really good job with that. It's right next to the Civic Center, but they did it for big concerts, Monster Jam, things of that nature. And unfortunately, it also houses the Stallions and the soccer team. They never really tried to do anything smaller. It was, it went from a dome 65,000 seat stadium to what we've got now, which is 47,000. And of course, this UAB's home. Legion Field is basically not used for hardly anything anymore. They have the SWAC game there every year or whatever. I mean, other than that, I don't know of any other events that's being held there.
So
I'll answer Anthony's questions. I saw both of them pop up.
So, was you going to say not a chance in hell?
No, he's phrasing his question wrong. First off,
he says,
there's no problem. There's not a single college team that would refuse the UFL from housing a team there. It's that Rapoli has no interest to do so under justifiable cause, which is we got to hit the first barometer of capping out a 15 to 20,000 venue size stadium before we look to go to the next level, which would be these bigger college stadiums like you're talking about. Houston's team for the past 3 years prior to this season, and the one-off shoot with Rice, we were playing in TDCU, a 40,000 stadium venue, but we could never fill it out. So, Anthony, your question, while, I appreciate it, I think it's good to ask and a good goal to shoot for long term. We're not going to try to fill these stadiums because they don't look filled. It presents more poorly on the television broadcast. That's why Rapoli is focusing on the soccer venues for the smaller capacity, consolidating the folks that do attend each team's games. And I think me and Ed touched on it earlier. You may not have been on the show at the time, but it seems like we're making headway with the kind of general relationship between the NFL and the UFL. So I think over time, that developmental bridge will start to get actually formed. And as we get more and more teams, the feasibility of having a true kind of farm structure, or if you want to call it a minor league, can present itself to be well paired with the NFL.
I think that
my counterparts to comment as well.
well, I thought I wasn't saying anything because Brett looked like he was thinking, so I was gonna.
Yeah, I'm just, I wish we had a crystal ball. But if you held a gun to my head, I would probably say New York along with Oklahoma City in 2028. But I think Ed and KJ is correct. That's probably when you get a couple of relocations. But I think next year, unless something really pops up that looks good to Rapoli, I think next year we're going to have the same 8 teams and be able to try to grow from there. There's going to have to be more effort put in, especially in Dallas and in Houston, because those 2 cities are just too big to not have more people come to the games. And I mean, I'm not asking for 20,000, but they could absolutely average 12 to 15,000 in those 2 cities with very little problem. I mean, I was so daggum high on Oklahoma City forever, and that one got taken. So Ed says Omaha, and KJ says Austin. Those are 2
asterisk relocation. Yeah,
right. Those are 2 fantastic. I mean,
the New York one makes a lot of sense because if you just follow the logic of, I don't know so much about Columbus and its personal connection to Rapoli. That one just seems logical because it's a football, we know the Hall of Fame and everything. But put that one on the shelf. Both Orlando and Louisville checked the boxes from a personal disposition with Rapoli. He has, a home or something in Orlando, I think. And then Louisville, he's got the anchoring with his investments already in equestrian, horse racing. So like that, to me, New York is the next logical precedent to follow because that's where he's from. That's his home roots.
Right.
Like I said, that's why I use the term Donald Trump-esque because it's like it's so vindictive of where he's from, what he has true deep ties to. Like,
and like I said, they've got 2 or 3 really good, just premier soccer stadiums up there. We didn't really hear recently anything to do with Pennsylvania like we heard in the past. But again, we kept hearing Austin over and over. And I checked out their soccer venue there, and it's pretty sweet. It's first class. And Jesus, I think the enrollment at the University of Texas is 80,000. I mean, Texas is just, Austin has just grown so much. It's just a supersized high-end Columbus. I imagine, 10, 12, 14,000 the first year is absolutely doable in Austin.
How big a stadium is Hoover Stadium in Birmingham?
12 or 15, I think.
It's 10,000 with the baseball setup, but when you add the bleachers on the opposite side, like when Hoover plays their games there, it's 14,000. So 10 to 14,000, which is really is perfect, and it's really a damn shame that the city of Birmingham hadn't already built something like that for the Stallions and for their soccer team. But getting Birmingham to do anything properly, hell, that's been going on my whole life. It'll probably be another 30 years before Birmingham will ever build something that Rapoli's actually looking for in that city, unfortunately.
Yeah, then Anthony mentions Raleigh and Charleston. We kind of touched on that a little bit. They've been mentioned, but I don't think they're seriously in the running.
Yeah. Raleigh was even mentioned when I brought up, you remember when I called the Columbus and Crew Stadium, that was one of them that had been brought up then. But at the time, they were going to have to play at NC State Stadium, which I think is somewhere in the 40-something thousand capacity. And I think that's why Rapoli hasn't made that move yet. It's just too big.
Well, we could probably talk relocation forever.
Oh yeah.
I gotta admit, that when we started the show tonight, I thought, oh man, it'd be an hour tops. Hour tops, and we'll be out of here. And we're closing in on 2 hours again with one game. So that just goes to show that there's plenty of stuff to talk about out there when it comes to the UFL. But
there's going to be a lot of rumors going around the next few weeks and months.
yeah, I think if there's going to be maybe one change, it's going to be a welcome change, is I think that there's going to be more talk earlier, and it's not going to just be stretch it on. What's going to happen? When's the schedule coming out? Blah, blah, blah. I think it's going to be, I think we're going to hopefully see more organization this next year. I guess proof will be in the pudding, but
well, and we've got one more year left on that famous, wonderful bargaining agreement with the players union. So at least we've got one more year before we have to deal with that nonsense again.
I don't know if you know Lucas Hill, Brett, but he says Birmingham has a fantastic fan base. The problem is that nobody can fill up half of the stadium. He doesn't see a scenario where they will ever fill that up all the way.
No. And I think I've missed one game in 5 years, Lucas, and we've got a really good hardcore group. And they follow them, and I talk to people, and I try to wear Birmingham stuff and UFL stuff everywhere I go when I'm off or whatever, and people do watch them. We've got good viewership, but I have fought for 5 years now trying to get more fans in that stadium, and it has been so ultra frustrating for me and for the Horsemen, which is a booster club over there with Chase and Blake and all them. It's and you'd be surprised how much time them and Boomer and Jay and Marty and myself and so many of us have put blood, sweat, tears, and money into trying to get more people in that damn stadium. And I can't tell you a thing I've dealt with in my life more frustrating. Because up until this year, the team definitely deserved. I'm still puzzled at why they can't, why we're not averaging 12, 15,000 fans a game. Because it's a good new venue. It's clean. It's in a good area of town. It's got, like I said, top golf, sports bars, restaurants all around it, right by the Civic Center. Not like you're going to Legion Field or something. I just can't wrap my head around why the numbers are not more. But, it needs to increase. So I just don't ever see Rapoli bringing them back next year at Protective. It's just too big, and you shouldn't have to beg the damn people to come see the team. We've been there 5 years. It's not like, they use the excuse the first year, oh, well, they'll be gone next year. Well, how many years are we going to use that excuse for?
Yeah, Marty says here that Reddit says that Hoover Met capacity is about 16,000 for football.
Yeah. I want to say that what everybody had said was 10,000 for the regular baseball structure, but then when they add the bleachers, on the opposing bench or whatever, it's another additional 4,000. So 14, 16,000, somewhere in that ballpark. Hoover's a really good area of Birmingham. It's a lot of money. It's where a lot of people live. I don't know. It's worth a shot. That's where the SEC baseball tournament is played. It has played there for, I don't know, probably 20 or 30 years now. And it sells out almost every game. It's got tons of parking. Uh, I would hate to leave Protective, but I really think the fans in Birmingham have pretty much given Rapoli no other choice. And it's and if this guy hadn't already cussed me out by now, he probably will. Very few Birmingham fans like me, although they know I mean well, but I don't cut them any slack. I mean, I live in Tuscaloosa, so I drive to every game. And I call them the Birmingham excuses because they find a damn excuse every week to not come to the game. And it is fucking ridiculous that the team has been that good for that long and for people to constantly say, well, I had to, I got to go to this or I got to go to that or I'm going to go to Talladega or, oh, Alabama's playing that scrimmage A-Day in Tuscaloosa or, it's something every week. The Birmingham Stallions fans wants the whole damn league and whole schedule to revolve around them, and that's just not reality. So, all right, I'm off my soapbox. What else we got?
So, I was just going to say that this is the final week for season 3. We're gonna end up with 43 episodes, and that's not counting them all like the 4-hour draft show that we had that didn't get counted as an episode. But that's every week, 2-hour shows. Season 2, we had 48 weeks. So if you're talking about a podcast that is dedicated, that you can look forward to being on live at 8 o'clock every Wednesday night, I think we've been that for sure. We will start again in late July, early August to cover another season of college football in the NFL. Until then, we're going to take a little break and recharge the batteries, give KJ a chance to study each and every college team in the top 100 so that when we come out with our power rankings for each of the, I call it Power 5 conferences because, you got the Big 4 and then you throw in the Big 12 just for measure. Takes a lot of time to cover it right. And then you throw the NFL on top of that, and we only get an hour for each one this fall. So season 4, we'll be going into our 4th year of doing this. We'll start up either the last Wednesday of July or the first Wednesday in August. I'll have to look at the calendar and do the math. But want to thank everybody out there who's listens to our show faithfully every week. We sure do appreciate it. Again, thank you to all the pages that allow us to share our show on your page. I would ask that if there's any UFL fan pages out there that do not want the bottom line to post the college and the NFL show to their page come this fall, please don't be afraid to reach out to me and I will try and do the same. We really enjoy sharing our show. We think it's a quality show and we want to put it out there to many as people as possible to see it. But if there's any fan pages out there that don't want us to post our show, I certainly don't feel offended to let me know that because the college and the NFL will probably still be posted to a lot of UFL pages until I get told otherwise. So with that said, do you guys have any podium emotional moments that you want to give out before we put a wrap on season 3?
Yeah, I'm gonna kill this little panther to keep showing up. She's hell bent on Michigan coming back. Yeah, I wanted to respond to Anthony. I just saw the comments real quick. Unfortunately, man, I feel like part of it with Alabama and Birmingham is it's a college state. I mean, you're basically Alabama or Auburn, and I think the only way we can grow that is like I mentioned to Napoleon in the show a while back, is just have a UFL tent with some bodies outside Bryant Denny Stadium and the stadium down in Auburn, Jordan Hare, before every game, and just try to spread the word and make them aware. Hey, Birmingham Stallions are here. They've been here 5 years. They got 3 championships. They're playing at this stadium. You've got to do some more ground and pound, because I think there's enough football fans in the state to make it work in Birmingham. But then you have a lot of the mentality of people is just, if it's not Alabama or Auburn, I'm not, that's just generation after generation after generation in that state. And I think it really hurts the southern markets when you start the season so late. School gets out, baseball starts, it's hot as hell, people are going on vacations. I just think it's a bad mixture to get butts in the seats in Birmingham. And Houston and Dallas, the same thing with the hot weather and late in the year, and people have moved on to vacations and baseball and things of that nature. So I think there's a lot of variables there in Birmingham, and the fact they've had so many failed teams there in the past. So they still haven't overcome that black eye, in my opinion, from the AAF in 2019. That's all I got. I wanted to respond to Anthony.
Well, and I was going to say too, Brett, that what does the championship games the last 3 seasons have in common? I think the last 2 in St. Louis, it was in the mid-90s, and DC was almost 90 at game time. So when you start pushing mid-June for championship games, even the heat in your northern cities start getting to be pretty unbearable for football. And you notice in the championship game, they kept taking injury timeouts, even when there wasn't injuries, just to let the football players get a drink of water and whatever. So they were aware with the cramping and all that the heat becomes an issue. So,
Well, it becomes a safety issue with the players, and in Birmingham, they had cleats melting on the damn field a couple of years ago.
And so when you talk about cold being a problem if you start too early, well, then you have the DCs and the Columbuses and stuff play their games down south to begin the season. And, maybe their first 3 or 4 games, they only have 1 home game because they're playing down south where in the warmer weather. But I think that starting earlier definitely has its advantages. But KJ, what's your parting shots?
I'm just ready for my Cougs to put a whooping on the Red Raiders for all this Sorsby drama over the offseason. So that's where I'm going to leave it. I'm counting down the days till our road game in Lubbock.
So again, everybody, it's been awesome. Another season's in the books for the bottom line. Whether it's college, whether it's the NFL, or whether it's the UFL, it is the bottom line. We will see you in late July.
And that's the bottom line.